still trickle in. But yeah, I'm Lorna. I work for the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and through that, I run help run the Regional Stormwater Education Program, which is what this webinar is part of. We work with the town and city of Saint Albans to promote stormwater education throughout the county and yeah, just get people aware with what's happening in the watershed. So this is our last webinar of the Spring 2026 series. Yeah, we're very excited to hear from Rachael with the Rozalia Project on microplastics. It's going to be a great presentation and a very new topic for us, something that's really important to Lake Champlain and all of Vermont. Um, yeah, I guess just a few like housekeeping things. Um, if you can keep your mics off until the end when we have a Q&A, that'd be great. Um, and like I said, this is being recorded, so I can put the link to all of our recorded webinars in the chat. But yeah, just FYI. And yeah, if you have any questions that come up, you can definitely leave them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So I think that's it. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rachael.
Okay, great. I will get things visually rolling. How's it look? Like a bunch of lake debris mixed with some sort of meso and microplastics? Is that what you can see?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay, that is great. All right, so we don't have a ton of people here live. So people who are watching this as a recording, you can just sort of play along. And I'm going to say that the people who are here live, if you want to put yourselves off of mute so we can hear you, because I can't see the chat, we have a little game to start. So take yourselves off of mute so I can hear you shout the answers. And we're going to start with this game that we like to call Name That Marine Debris. We're going to start big and then we're going to end up small because ultimately this is a talk about microplastics. But let's start with this thing that you're looking at in the sonar view. If anyone has a question or a guess, shout it out. Lorna, you can play too. Here's what the thing looks like through the ROV or underwater vehicle's camera. Any guesses? No guesses? These are lobster traps.
Oh, sure.
So we do work in Vermont, but we also do a lot of work out in the Gulf of Maine. And this is something that we come across a lot. Okay, so this is something we could find in Vermont. This is in the middle of the water column. This is something that's floating. Does anyone have a guess about what this is? It is smaller than a lobster trap. You can hold it in your hand. In fact, that's how you use it, in your hand. Any guesses? The color gives it away. If you were thinking maybe it's a red solo cup,
wow.
you were right. Fascinatingly, solar cups break up vertically. Like the bottom stays intact and you get these like vertical breaks. So there it is kind of flying around through the middle of the water column. All right. This one is, this is technically bigger than a solo cup. I should switch the order. Any guesses? Or even the genre of what this is, category.
It looks like a fishnet or like fabric of some sort.
You're
I don't know.
definitely warm. I am wearing this garment right now, but you can't see it because I'm sitting. This is a pair of jeans. And the little like cuff gives it away, or
Mhm.
the hem.
I
Okay,
see.
now we're getting small. So not the sand, but the colorful and the black and white things in the sand. This, I'll give you some hints. This isn't consumer debris. It is pre-consumer. So it is part of manufacturing. Guesses? Have you heard the term either resin pellet or nurdles? This is the raw material of plastic manufacturing. And I don't know what had happened, but this is in Stinson Beach in California. just in Marin County near San Francisco. There must have been some kind of spill. There's no other trash, but there were thousands of all sorts of colored resin pellets that day. All right, now we're getting much smaller, so small that we need to give you a magnified image. Any guesses on this magnified thing that is smaller than like small enough that you need to magnify? Guesses?
Glitter.
Yes, glitter. Glitter in America is mostly plastic, but it doesn't have to be. There are bio glitters out there. All right, and this is the last one. This is the smallest of the options here of the part of the game. The yellow thing, if you want to guess that, that would be amazing. No one's actually guessed what it is. It's there for scale, but it's the little colorful stuff. If you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh, it kind of looks like it might have come from clothing, you are right. That is a fuzzball that came from dried effluent water. So took water coming out of a washing machine, dried it, found all of this fiber in there, and then took a little pinch and put it next to a piece of spaghetti. All right, we have one last thing at the end on this game, but I will launch into an explanation of Rozalia Project, and then we'll talk about microplastics from far away to right here at home. Rozalia Project for a Clean Ocean, our mission is to protect everything that leads to the ocean and the ocean itself as well. So rivers, lakes, and ocean, and conserve a healthy, thriving marine ecosystem. And we primarily work on the problem of marine debris. We use 4 strategies to do our work, and they include data cleanups. Now, we're not a cleanup organization because we do so much more, but doing data cleanups helps us understand what is happening in a place in order to prevent it. And of course, there's habitat restoration, and it's a great way to connect people to the problem. We also do prevention through education programs, embrace innovation and technology, and we do solutions-based research. Our work is on the whole water column. So the shoreline, the surface, that's a freezer floating around the Gulf of Maine, and even on the seafloor. So this, I would like to introduce you, is our ROV, our remotely operated vehicle called Hector the Collector. Our work geographically is focused on urban, inland, and coastal waters. This is where the majority of marine debris comes from, and we believe that's where the most cost-effective and efficient work is done. And of course, Vermont is in there, inland waters, and we've done a lot of different types of work in Vermont. We'll get to what we're doing now in a moment, but we've done things like large-scale post-Irene Hurricane Irene cleanup with FEMA, where we had 5 crews working all over this kind of area in the state that was hit by Hurricane Irene. And we didn't just clean up, but we recorded what we found. And in a lot of places, we did some great baseline work, but it was crazy. We picked up, or these guys picked up, 2,300 tires that washed down the Winooski. We currently have exciting Vermont programs, and Claire, this year's lead educator for our Vermont programs, is on the call. So if people have some ideas or specific something you're looking forward to or questions between me and Claire, and Ashley, if she jumps on the call, our executive director, will be able to answer. But we're really excited about this summer, as we always are. We are optimistic. In the face of an overwhelming problem, we recognize that the collective we made the problem of marine debris, and we believe that the collective we can get back ahead of it. As far as operations, in Vermont, we do generally operate from the shoreline. But out of Vermont, particularly in the Gulf of Maine, we operate from this beauty. This is American Promise. She's a 60-foot sailing oceanographic research vessel. Little piece of American sailing history. She sailed around the world with the Dodge Morgan. He sailed around alone without stopping in world record time. And we keep her out in front now, not by racing, but by using solar, wind, and hydropower for all of our house bank needs. So she does have a diesel engine, but she's also got sails, and we're looking to keep her as low footprint as possible. Now, when it comes to the problem of marine debris on the whole, there are really three component parts that are the biggest. And one is derelict fishing gear. You saw those lobster traps. And that really is what we generally work on in the Gulf of Maine from American Promise. It's often thought of as the most deadly form of marine debris because, of course, nets are meant to harvest animals. And if they end up detached from the fishing boats or the people working on them, they still will kill animals, but not as a harvest. And so that's a high priority category. But not so much in Vermont. We have more of the other two categories, and they are consumer debris. These are everyday items, food packaging, things like balloons, which we find an insane amount of, particularly actually on the Gulf of Maine. And then, of course, microplastics. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening. And in order to talk about the problem, I want to get us all on the same page language-wise. So a little bit of definition about microplastics. They are synthetic pieces that are 5 millimeters and less. 5 millimeters is about the width of your pinky nail. And there are two kinds. There are primary. These are things like you've already seen, glitter and resin pellets. These were plastic items that were made this small. So they always have spent their entire life 5 millimeters and less. This also includes microbeads, which thankfully have been taken out of the system. You can no longer put plastic microbeads in personal hygiene products, though we did, this is all from Lake Champlain, this example right here. So we have found them here. Then there's secondary microplastics. Secondary microplastics are exactly what they sound like. They are pieces that have broken off of larger pieces of plastic, and these secondary or broken off piece is less than 5 millimeters. And so there we have secondary or microfibers. We have micro pieces of film and microfragments or microplastic fragments. I want to bring to your attention, because I am going to talk about some of the results that we've found when sampling for microplastics. And that's something that kind of deserves its own category. It's a subcategory of microfiber. So you think microfiber can be a subcategory of microplastic. So you'd have synthetic microfiber. But we also have found quite a bit of non-synthetic microfiber. So whereas synthetic microfiber could be pieces of polyester, acrylic, or nylon threads, and tiny filaments that have broken off of clothing, we are also concerned with the man-made or anthropogenic threads that have been treated with, in some cases, God only knows what, dyes, optical brighteners, wrinkle releasers, and all sorts of other things that are coming off of our non-synthetic clothing. So this example, this is a piece of dyed cotton that is leaking its dye onto our slide. So we have right here the evidence that non-synthetic fibers can still be part of the environmental problem. But when we talk about microplastics, there really is more research about the microplastic, which includes fragments and fibers and film and beads, and its effect, its presence in the environment, and its effect. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. We know now that over 1,300 species have taken in, inhaled, or ingested microplastic. And they range from the little guys. These are pictures from a lab experiment demonstrating that plankton can, in fact, ingest microplastic beads and microplastic fibers, all the way to the large animals, the charismatic megafauna and the polar bears and penguins of our polar region. And the results of these animals taking on microplastics is varied. They do not all experience all of these things on this list, but there have been documented changes in reproduction. So animals making fewer babies, and the babies they make are less strong. So they could be less able to survive, to changes in behavior, which has included preferring the plastic food that animals were being given to the real food that gives them actual nutrition and the ability to do what they have to do, to all sorts of changes in everything from internal processes. So that's pretty scary. Now, if you think about it, the marine food web isn't exclusive to the human one. So there's definitely overlap. And a relatively recent study found that when they went to investigate fish that are meant for people's plates, so fish meant for dinner, they did it a couple ways. They went to fishing vessels, so that's vessel retrieved. They went to retail establishments, so places where they were selling whole fish and also cooked fish in the Pacific Northwest. And they found that 99% of all of that had microplastic in it. And when they looked at which type of microplastic, it was mostly fibers. So if you don't eat fish, it has been found that you're not necessarily off the hook for exposure through food. And I'm just going to warn you now, this is all going to get a little bit worse, actually quite a bit worse. And then just a few slides later, it's all going to be about science and knowledge and action. But it is important to understand the problem. So beyond creatures in the sea who become food for humans, there has been found microplastic in food from the grown and not very processed on the top row to the increasingly processed. So the more processed, the more microplastics they are finding. That middle white thing is tofu. And on the middle right, those are chicken nuggets. And then if you go processed and packaged in plastic, that is where one is likely to have the most exposure. So processed food, packaged in plastic, and that could include cans that are lined in plastic, unfortunately. So beverages aren't off the hook. It's been found in colas and sodas, in the tea bags, but not every tea bag. So that's definitely something that you can look for. And loose tea is a great solution. It has been found in beer, and that used to be the worst thing I had to say. But since then, studies have found that there's microplastics in tap water. But I do not want you to be alarmed, because look at the number. It's really not that much. I am definitely not driving you to bottled water, because bottled water has has the potential to have an incredibly high amount of microplastics. I sat next to the researcher, the scientist from Columbia University who did the study on single-use PET plastic water bottles. And we were at a microplastic summit in New York State, and he told me that after doing this work, he doesn't let anyone that he loves drink from a single-use water bottle. So that says a lot. All right, this is the worst of it, because you might be thinking, okay, you saw the effects in creatures, and we've now established that there's exposure to humans. So studies now have also established that it is getting into human systems, and that includes lungs, heart tissue, throughout the digestive tract, gums. It's gotten into the reproductive system of men and women, into our blood, into arterial plaque, and into brain tissue. And for a while, that's all we could say, is that it was there, but there wasn't a lot of information to follow that up with. Starting in around March of 2024, and increasingly as time goes on, studies are being published in peer-reviewed journals that indicate potential correlations between the presence of microplastics in different human organs and human systems and a set of symptoms that none of us want to experience. The darker gray are experiments where humans or human parts were used, and the light gray are experiments where mice were used. So this is all pretty scary, and for me, more than enough evidence to act. So the rest of this is all about action. What Rozalia Project is doing on the microplastic side is pretty exciting. and accessible. So we have embarked on a program called CSI for the Ocean. It is a global citizen science microplastic mapping and monitoring project. And we have been executing this work with people in the polar regions on the National Geographic Lindblad expedition ships. So people of this age. We're working right here in Vermont with people this age. This is the environmental problem solving class at the University of Vermont. And we're working all around with people this age. What's exciting about the program is the name. CSI for the Ocean indicates what's enabling it, and that is a combination or a weaving of forensic science and marine science to have methods that are accessible. And in some cases, we are having students do the work. In some cases, it's a little more hybrid. So for our hybrid work, it's generally something that I've had the pleasure to lead, and we've been sampling in a lot of places. You see, we're better latitude than longitude. We definitely need some more longitude. But we've been throwing metal buckets in the ocean for surface samples in Hawaii, Arctic Svalbard, that's in the far north, up to 80 degrees north. In the Faroe Islands, which has this amazing landscape, there's the ship that I have been acting as visiting scientist on. In South Georgia, and I want to bring your attention to the shoreline. You can see it's sort of marbled. For some reason I can't get my cursor to show up. It's marbled. So all of that isn't clearly grass and isn't clearly snow on that near shoreline, that's all penguins. And in the Antarctic Peninsula. At the same time, we've been sampling for air as well. So I wanted to share some quick hit results for you from this work. Okay, so if you tip the globe and you look at Antarctica, there's a circumpolar current. It is called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. And there's been some hypotheses that protects Antarctica from some of the effects of humans, like our trash and things like that. And the good news is that we have not found a lot, but the sort of bad news is that we are finding some microplastic in Antarctica. So like I said, we're sampling the air and the water. So here's an example of where we are finding it. Blue and gray just indicate that's where we sampled. The big red circle indicates what we call a primary hotspot, so an area with higher concentration. And orange is a secondary hotspot. So we'll say it's higher than the blues, but it is second place. So high enough to be interested in, but second. So there's our airborne hotspots. And we'll slide the slider bar and you can see the surface water hotspots. And what's interesting about this result is that there aren't a lot of people down here. But I can say that there might be some explanation of this. Where the northern hotspots were found, both in the air and water, that area is where the most ships go, the most tourist ships go. And so that could be an explanation for that area. Now, down in the southern one, we, on the National Geographic Resolution, we were the first, and then 10 days later, we were the second ship to go down there. There's a lot of ice. These particular ships have the best ice breaking, so not a lot of other ships go down there, really mostly the Nat Geo ones. That said, so I really don't think that it's from ships, and I don't think it's from us, but there are a lot, which is 8 bases down there, kind of right around there. So that is my current hypothesis, and we're working on understanding if those are valid explanations, but something that is ongoing. Now let's go to a little bit closer, still polar, a little bit closer to where we are, and that is Arctic Svalbard. So for some orientation, you can see Svalbard, it's marked. The big blob of green on the left, that's Greenland. The little thing below Greenland is Iceland. And we can see the top of, that's the top of Norway. There's a little bit of Sweden and Finland in there. But on this expedition, we sampled around Svalbard, and then you see in the fjords of Norway. And you can see that there are 2 hotspots in Svalbard. Now, the bits of red indicate the presence of people. And you can see there really aren't very many people in Svalbard. Like there really aren't people in Svalbard. There's one town and we didn't sample there, so you can't see it, but it's sort of to the left in the big fjord to the left of the eight. So you might be thinking, how can that be? Really, mostly in Svalbard, there's glaciers, polar bears, and walruses and birds. I love the walruses so much. So let's look at our sampling in Svalbard. So here's surface water. So that's what we just saw. We did another expedition, which is going to be revealed, where we went west. So Svalbard compared to East Greenland and Iceland, and we still had all of our hotspots in Svalbard, where there are very few people. So if you are thinking to yourself that the explanation is likely the currents, you're exactly right. This is what we think is going on. So think of the Gulf Stream. It's going north along the East Coast. Technically, you could say that Lake Champlain is connected to the Gulf Stream, at least by the fact that we can get in and out of Lake Champlain by water. And it flows north to the St. Lawrence and out. So at the top of the Gulf Stream, the current takes a right and heads east. It becomes the North Atlantic Current. It goes over the top of the British Isles, becomes the Norwegian Coastal Current, and you see that it dead ends in Svalbard. And we think that's the explanation, is that it is possible that microplastics from the East Coast are ending up with the polar bears and the walruses in Svalbard. So now let's get a lot closer to home. One of our signature microplastic studies was sampling the entire Hudson River. Every 3 miles from Lake Tier of the Clouds to Ambrose Light, where the Hudson meets the Atlantic. We sampled that. We did it twice. Once where we went and just sampled the surface. The second time we sampled the air. We sampled the water, including mid-water column and just above the seafloor, as well as the soil. We did it on American Promise. So our dining room table, well, it was like breakfast, science, lunch, science, dinner, science. You get the picture. And what we found, or one of the notable things, it would be a whole nother presentation to talk all about the Hudson River expedition, but I'll give you one of the sort of fascinating results. And that was no statistically significant difference in concentration of microplastics and man-made microfiber across the whole river, which is pretty incredible considering New York City is right there. Now, even though there's no statistically significant difference, we can still calculate hotspots. And that was also really interesting because you'll see that our hotspots also were not particularly associated with New York City. There's one around Poughkeepsie, which is about a third of the way up from the bottom. There is a big wastewater treatment plant there. And one of the sources of microplastics, microfibers in particular, is through washing machines. And so that kind of makes sense. But then we found hotspots you'll see at the tippy top. No one's allowed to live up there. There are no washing machines right up there. There's no homes. There are people recreating, though. And that made us realize that there are more sources for microfiber pollution than just washing machines, but it is likely coming through the air, perhaps clothes falling apart while you wear them and or dryers. And that is, in fact, what has happened. But since this presentation is a little bit more overview, I'm not going to go super deep dive. If people want to follow up and get more information about any of these research studies, I am happy to share or point you to where there is some. So in Vermont, we are just really starting our CSI for the Ocean style work. And we've kicked that off with this environmental problem solving course with amazing students from UVM. This is from the fall semester. We currently have a spring semester working. The fall semester, effectively what they were doing was a small version of the Hudson study, and they picked the Winooski. We're hoping that over years, over time, and Claire, we're excited for you to be part of this, we are going to have subsequent groups do the whole Winooski River. So right now, this group went from Bolton to the mouth of the Winooski, just south of Colchester. And you can see right in the middle, their little heat map indicates that preliminary findings are that the amount of microplastics, including synthetic and non-synthetic microfiber increased the closer that we got to the river mouth. So that was interesting. And then I'll bring your attention to the little graph at the bottom middle that far more fibers were found than fragments. Again, I'm happy to share this. There's a lot of info there. Our work, though, on Lake Champlain did predate this microplastics work with CSI for the Ocean. Way back, I can't believe how long ago it is now. In 2013, we did a sediment study where we went to places around the lake and we picked up sand or dirt. It was mostly sand where we were operating, and sifted through it visually to collect the microplastics and various particles, that man-made particles that were in those samples. It was a randomly done study, so we weren't walking up and down opportunistically picking up trash, but we were kind of throwing a yogurt container out, and wherever it landed is where we took the sample. And here's some visual results from some of our samples. I can sort of take that in for a moment. You can see a lot of secondary microplastics, some fibers. Certainly, you can probably make out quite a bit of what we'd call expanded polystyrene or styrofoam in different forms. And if you're really eagle-eyed, you'd see some resin pellets. Here's a close-up of some, you can see a microbead on the far left, a little perfectly round blue microbead, and then quite a bit of expanded polystyrene. Here's a close-up of some resin pellets that we got from Lake Champlain and some exfoliant beads. And here's some of the results of what we found that year. So all of our work is being done with the intent to understand the problem so we can prevent it. And so some of the ways we look at it is, can we tell what it is we're looking at? And so we want to know kind of what are the materials, and then we want to know what are the things, what are the actual sources. So in terms of material, technically all of that is plastic, but we can do a little differentiating. And most of the type of identifiable plastic or material that we found, you can see, was foam with, we can't tell exactly what it is, plastic next, and then plastic sheeting or film next or third. In terms of identifiable items, you'll see it was pretty close. We had quite a bit of the resin pellets. So again, upstream of consumers, that's an industrial waste. And then paint chips, a lot were yellow. I think they were from the roads, which is a study I would love to pursue. And then a lot of plastic sheeting tape. My hypothesis is that it was washing off of agricultural fields. Like, it seemed like it was agricultural plastic, but again, I've got a whole list of studies to be done in Vermont that would be really helpful. Looking at our overall results, we found nearly 800 pieces of individual particles or debris, and we only had 20 different types, at least that we could tell, and there's the list. Because we were picking up so little and it was not opportunistic, this list looks a little different from when we do a beach cleanup. And I'm going to share some beach cleanup results as well. Incredibly, food wrappers still made the top 10, which I find pretty fascinating. But you can see most of what we found was just broken pieces of things that we couldn't tell where they came from or what the original source was. When we looked at the geographic distribution of what we found around the lake, we didn't sample north of the sort of Plattsburgh Islands line, so we don't have the entire lake. But you can see that there's a bit of a relationship between the big population areas. So Burlington was the highest and Plattsburgh was the next. Then also we want to help people understand what the concentrations even mean. Like, what does it mean when there's X number of particles per liter? So we put it in gallons and milk jugs. And so this is how we would look at the results geographically and with concentration. So like, that's a lot of plastic in your milk if you think about it, really, on any of them. But I would say like from 24 up. I don't even want 4 in my milk, but still. And then as an overall calculated potential load, we were at 7 million. We were not using any magnification as well. So we were just looking with our eyes. And then in terms of weight, quite a bit. So this is something that is an area of concern on Lake Champlain. There's no doubt. We knew that in 2013, and we're only learning more about that now. But what's great is as we learn about it, we are also helping solve the problem. So here is our top 10 items over a little more than a decade. So connecting that first study with cleanup, so opportunistic cleanups, all the way until just a couple years ago. And you can see that foam takes up 3 of the top 5 categories. And then there's food wrappers, cigarettes, things like that, identifiable. So on the foam issue, that is one that we are particularly concerned with. And Ashley, our executive director, had an experience a couple of years ago where she was on the lakeshore and just, it was very clear that what she was finding was from dock foam. So you might have seen that there are areas on the lake with unencapsulated dock foam. And this stuff just quite literally breaks as it's being used. There's nothing to protect it. You can imagine it. And thanks to a partnership with Conservation Law Foundation and the fact that we had been collecting data for so long, I am thrilled to share that that collection of data, along with some great policy work, resulted in this, the Flood Safety Act 121. And so this was effective 2 years ago, and it effectively outlaws or makes illegal unencapsulated dock on the Vermont side of Lake Champlain. So as you can imagine, and all of our lakes. So you can imagine that like next would be to have New York do it, because it's sort of silly to have one law at a shared lake, but it's a start and it will absolutely help. So in order to help spread the word and with compliance and general inspiration, not just about dock foam, but particularly about dock foam, and about all the problems of marine debris in Lake Champlain, we are part of a cross-lake coalition called the Lake Champlain Basin Marine Debris Coalition with these amazing partners on both sides of the lake. Claire will be doing a ton of work with the coalition this summer, and there's opportunities for everyone to be involved. Now, that's foam, and that was a really nice way to address at least one big part, really tangible. Dock foam, those foams are falling apart under the docks. Let's not make that legal. There are alternatives. We can do something about it. Now, we know that we find a lot of fibers in the samples. It's nearly entirely fibers in our polar samples. It was majority fibers in the Hudson River. The studies that have been done in Lake Champlain often come up with fibers more than anything else. And the characteristics described by those fibers fall into clothing. Like they describe clothing. And so what CSI for the Ocean and our sampling program can help us identify on a global scale, or even locally, although I don't think it's going to be a problem locally, but point sources locally, is to see if we can identify point sources. So being able to do a global citizen science microplastic and microfiber project can help us understand if this, I love this visual, if this visual could help us indicate where there might be more fibers around the world based on clothing exports. Until we have people using similar methods and reporting in similar ways on a global scale, this is very hard to determine. So this is potential point sources that the type of research we're doing could reveal. There hasn't been a lot of indication that that's going to be the case, but until we get more places, we don't know. What is more likely, and what we've been finding so far, is that the problem with fibers will be coming from multiple diffuse sources. So our clothing, but like not necessarily clothing factories, things like wastewater treatment plants washing machines, then wastewater treatment plants, or the biosolids from wastewater treatment plants, dryers, wearing clothes, and things like that. And if that in fact is the case, we still have solutions that our data can support, but they're a little bit different. They're things like building more resilient clothing, like this jacket. This is a very, very low shed jacket, is why that's sitting there. And building our clothing and our textiles out of bio-derived and bio-benign materials so that when they break, well, hopefully they'll break less, but there's still going to be breakage. There are less consequences to our environment, to ourselves, and the creatures. So I'm going to kind of wrap up pretty quickly with a good list of my favorite solutions. So the first are solutions that we have come up with, we being our team at Rozalia Project. So out of Rozalia Project came this. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the Coraball. So when we first heard about the problem, it was entirely centered on washing machines. And so that's where we focused our desire to come up with a solution. And we came up with this. You put it in your washing machine. The design was inspired by coral. And this is what it looks like. You put it in your washing machine. And it was initially designed to be a microfiber catcher. And this is what it looks like when it does catch fiber. It also catches hair and, I mean, effectively fuzz is fiber from our clothes falling apart. So when you take a fuzz ball and you put the digital microscope on it, you can see the big thing on the right is hair, and you can see how small the fibers are. And what you see with your naked eye is like a gray fuzzball that you think is mostly hair. It really could be a lot of fiber. But the thing that we found, and also peer-reviewed, independent, peer-reviewed published studies found, is that it's actually not so much about catching. Catching is a bonus. What the Coraball actually seems to do is it prevents or reduces shedding. And so what's been found is that we think the Coraball, the reason this happens is it holds clothes apart and reduces the amount of garment-to-garment abrasion. And catching is a bonus, and that this will keep up to 31% of the microfibers that would otherwise wash out your laundry from going into the wastewater treatment plants around Lake Champlain, or your septic, which will still end up in the wastewater treatment plants of Lake Champlain. So does anyone know what this is? It's a magnified image of a thing that we all use, at least the category of thing. If you are thinking, gross, that is a plastic cutting board, you're correct. Plastic cutting boards are an incredible vector for getting microplastics into your food. There's been some studies about that, and there are ways to avoid it. You can get a wooden cutting board from wherever. I will plug ours. It is one piece of Vermont hardwood maple, no plastic, no glue, no resin, no wax, absolutely nothing but a piece of Vermont maple. Another solution is to learn more about the problem and have some help making decisions. I was so excited that I wrote my first book. It published last year. It's called Decision Making in the Age of Plastics. If you want to learn more about the book, I had a great conversation with Mitch Wertlieb on Vermont Edition. So you can listen to a whole thing about the book if you just search either my name, Rachael Miller, or Decision Making in the Age of Plastics on the Vermont Edition or VPR websites, or you can just check it out yourself. You can get it a couple ways. Our team has also used other media to share, and I don't mean necessarily, I mean artistic media. So we often have guest artists, and this one, that's her. She is a sustainable fashion designer, Runa Ray. She came with us on a remote island cleanup in the Gulf of Maine, and our goal was to make a dress out of what we found, and we did. This is it. It is made out of entirely and only fishing line. It's like the traveling pants. Everybody felt and looked awesome in it. But it's not all about us by any stretch. So I'm going to go through kind of fast my favorite solutions from around the world. One of them is interdisciplinary approaches. So that is the fact that the people in the forensic department at Staffordshire, well, they're called University of Staffordshire now, realized that they could take their fiber knowledge and bring it to marine science. I love that. There's been some incredible messaging campaigns like the one that got microbeads banned, ones that are working on banning mass balloon releases. Like I said, art can be a solution by reminding people that our storm drains are connected to the nearest waterway. More art in the form of marine debris art in different places. This is in like a fancy hotel in Miami. And this artist, Cindy Pease Rowe, came with us. She's awesome. She's based in Long Island, and she even taught us to make our own little marine debris whales. That's her second from the right. You can see her whale is definitely the best whale. We had a great time. Of course, policy is a solution. The more science-based and like likely it is to be passed, the better. So there's all different ways that's happening at the government national level. We also have kind of this thing going on in the US. This is a map that was made a bunch of years ago by Nat Geo. So what it's showing are bag bans. It's showing bans on bag bans, and it is showing areas that are banning the banning of bag bans. We also have Ocean Conservancy developing things like this used for not just municipalities, but whole nations to figure out what works for them, because not everyone is starting in the same place. Then, of course, there's innovative materials and redesign that includes the whole life cycle, including end of life. So that would be like making algae straws, because some people need straws, but doing them out of plastic doesn't have to happen. We can have replacing plastic stirrers with spaghetti. This is a late friend of mine who invented this amazing meat tray. So it does away with the meat diaper by having one piece of PET, so recycled and recyclable plastic, stamped with a honeycomb bottom. Check this out. Boom. It holds the water just like a meat diaper would, but you can actually wash it and recycle it. We have some amazing infrastructure projects out there. This uses the concept of humpback whale bubble netting. So humpback whales can corral whole fish pods with their bubbles. And so this team in Amsterdam realized that they wanted to clean up the canals, but they couldn't just like put a boom across the canals. There's like a billion boats going back and forth. So they realized that bubbles have enough power to divert stuff that doesn't swim on its own, like trash, into a dumpster on the side, and yet boats and even fish can swim through it. We have the kind of partner to that, which is when you do have a stream or a river that you could put a boom across, so one that's not being navigated. This, if you've seen it, is in Baltimore. There's Mr. Trash Wheel, and the girl one is Professor Trash Wheel. And so they get big rains, a big flush of trash that comes down this river in the rain. So you can picture moving water. The boom stops the trash. The water turns the paddle wheel. The paddle wheel turns the conveyor belt. And all of that stuff is collected per year with very little human intervention. I love it. Financial instruments are a way to have an impact on this problem. And grants are important and make a lot of what Rozalia Project does and a lot of our partner nonprofits work. But there's also some cool strategies that USAID used to do, like de-risking investments in waste infrastructure in places around the world, like these. But this is an example of science being a solution and driving solutions. This paper came out in 2015. It indicated some of the areas in the world that had the most leakage, so the most mismanaged plastic waste ending up in our oceans. And you'll see perhaps there that Indonesia is number 2. So Indonesia, of course, relies on tourism. And I was there for a marine debris expedition, and we had this guy, he's a minister of maritime affairs. And he told us that when this paper came out, they were appropriately horrified. They're like, we can't allow this to happen. It's going to wreck our tourism industry. And then they kind of looked inside internally, and they saw that they had rivers that looked like that one on the top. So they put their army on the case, and that is that same river after they cleaned it up. And science did that. So I'm going to end with some suggestions. We're calling this the 2.0 actions. On the left are great actions for individuals. On the right are actions for people who are in corporate positions who can affect the problem, which really we all can. But if you think about it, rethinking the amount of single use items that you use, working on reducing packaging doesn't just save waste from existing, but it reduces the exposure that you and your family have to microplastics. Thinking about making our stuff retain its value instead of throwing it away by repairing it, helping us with data cleanups, sharing things that you've learned in this particular presentation, and then of course in the workplace there's a lot that can happen that's along the same lines from with a theme of resource reduction. And anyone who's working on design is thinking about not just designing for the moment the thing gets used, but designing for the entire life of whatever thing it is that you're working on. So I'm going to end with one more Name That Marine Debris. No one has ever guessed this. So if you want to turn on your microphones and give it a go, that would be cool. We'll go to questions next anyway. Does anyone have a guess? It's a fake mustache. We found it on the Burlington waterfront. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Thank you if you've joined us on your own time on the recording. Whatever happens, here is my information and a plug to join our team very soon to celebrate Earth Day on Saturday, April 25th. That QR code should work, but when I turn this off, I will also put the link in the chat. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lorna, for hosting not just this whole series, but addressing this topic and Rozalia Project.
Sure. Thank you, Rachel. That was a great presentation. And if you want to leave the picture up so people can see it, that's totally fine. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I can put it up. Hi, Ashley. That's our executive director. So we've got a bunch of the team here. All right, I'm going to put that back up. Continue to share. There you go. And this way I can still see people.
Very excited. And I guess that's kind of this presentation is a good lead-in. I'm about to start sharing and promoting our summer stream cleanups in Vermont. We do a few in the summer, and there's also other organizations doing cigarette butt cleanups that I promote on our Facebook as well. So if you don't already follow Franklin County Stormwater on both Facebook and Instagram, it's a great way to get involved on a really local Franklin County scale. If you're interested in preventing spreading of microplastics. So,
that's awesome. And I'll really quick just introduce Ashley, who can talk a little more specifically about our public welcome to the public cleanup plan. Go for it, Ashley.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Great presentation, Rachel. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to give a shout out to our Earth Day cleanup because it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be down on the Burlington waterfront. So Lorna, feel free to share. I can actually put the flyer or email it to you and feel free to share with your networks. And I'll also share that with this funding that we recently got from NOAA, that kind of was the real beginning of this coalition here in Vermont on marine debris. Rozalia Project role is really to provide education and outreach around marine debris to youth and adults and families in general. So if Lorna, if you think of any opportunities, whether it's camps that you know, or maybe that you all host, or opportunities to collaborate in the northern region, we are open and all ears and would love an opportunity to do that.
Sure, that sounds great. Yeah, and I guess also applicable to anyone who's maybe listening to this. If you have any ideas, feel free to contact any of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
does anyone have any questions? Holly or Regina?
Hi, this is Holly.
Hi, Holly.
You showed that really cool coral ball. I don't know where you could get one, but also I was curious. You pulled, well, you have one, but I don't. But you pulled some of the lint or fiber stuff out of it. Plus, I think you may have mentioned even dryer lint. Well, the new machines collect some of that, but what are we supposed to do with it that's better than just putting it in the garbage?
This is a great question, Holly. Appreciate it. So I in Vermont right now, you can get it in person at the Middlebury Co-op or just from us. And just so you know, it is made in Vermont and shipped from Vermont. So it's entirely local, and our whole supply chain is in the US, thank goodness. So the question about what to do with all of your laundry lint. So dryer lint and washer lint, because you kind of couldn't collect washer lint. I agree. Mila, I know, tells people to wash the washer lint tray drawer thing filter under the sink. Please don't do that. So what I think is the best thing to do for all of it is to put it in the trash bin. Now, I know that our landfills don't have the best kind of collective reputation, but I can say that if you don't do anything, the likelihood, or you let it go through the water system, the likelihood of this stuff being what we would call bioavailable, so it's exactly what it sounds like, available for biological creatures and systems to intake or uptake it, is high. If you put it in the bin, our waste management system in Vermont is pretty good. I mean, it would be fascinating to go to our landfills and see in what particular instance, like a deluge or a flood or something, if there is any kind of microplastic leakage, but I have not heard of that. And for the most part, in the US, the trash is a far, far superior and pretty effective, though I wish we didn't have to use it, but it is a very usable for this particular, it is the best option for this. And someday, there might be a bin at our transfer stations where we can put clothing lint, and it has a future. It's difficult right now because if you took, so there's 6 of us right now on the call live, if we just like wrote down all the fabrics we're wearing, there could be 50 different fabrics between the 6 of us, like all of it. And they all have different melt temperatures. Some are natural, some are synthetic, some have a high tensile strength, some don't. And it is we don't have anything that could scan it. We don't have anything that could separate it. Like there's no polyester magnet or acrylic magnet. And we don't have anything proven where we could take something that's so many materials. Now, there are people working on this, and they're working on it in different ways. So stay tuned. But for now, please put it in your trash and then feel good about having diverted it from the water system. Regina, did you have a question?
No, but I would like to just thank you for this presentation and for all that you do. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us this evening to learn all about it. Hopefully someday we'll see you on the edge of Lake Champlain for one of the events.
Okay.
That would be great.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
You talked a little bit or slid past a lot of stuff about outreach. I'm just curious because my granddaughter is a Girl Scout. Do you guys open to doing a regional Girl Scout presentation on this? Because, these little girls are going to grow up in all those fancy fabrics and cutting boards and doing laundry.
I'll start and then hand it to Ashley. So I will say, yes, I would love that. But there might even be more than that, like an in-person thing. What do you think, Ashley? And Claire would run it.
Yeah, 100%. I actually, we were just talking, one of my colleagues was talking to a scout leader in Burlington who reached out about a national initiative that is called Scouting for Clean Water. And wanting to help with a cleanup. So we actually just reached out to them about the cleanup that we're doing on the waterfront. But yeah, if you want to put us in touch with your troops, we would love to come up with some, educational programming or lead a cleanup for you all, a presentation in person. That's exactly what we're here for.
Or even CSI for the ocean sampling, a little microplastic action. And let's put it this way, Holly, the minimum we could do is a webinar, but we could do way better than that as well. So like Ashley said, pass along either mine. I'm putting Ashley. Ashley, can I put your email address?
Absolutely. But Holly, interesting though, there is like a new there's a new badge that I guess let me see. It's saying, I'm just reading it. Scouts are back and making an impact with scouting for clean waterways. It just launched on April 1st as a part of Earth Month. Last year they had more than 6,800 youth participating in the Scouting America, and they collected, wow, this is crazy. The scouts collected 130,000 pounds of trash. So
Scouts.
yeah, go scouts. And I'm happy, actually, you know what? I'm just
I
gonna,
put all of our emails there.
yeah, and I'm just gonna share this too, Holly, in the chat because I think it's kind of cool. And maybe hopefully your scout folks, oops, it's not coming. Maybe your scout folks will know more about this. Scouting for clean. I'll just type it.
I
Scouting.
love it. It seems like a CSI for the ocean opportunity there.
Yeah, 100%. Scouting for clean water. Cool.
That's so awesome. I remember as a Girl Scout when I was little, we did a clean water section, so I'm sure they would enjoy that. Um, yeah, I guess if there's no more questions, we can wrap it up there. Like I said, this will be on our website. It's Franklin County Stormwater fcsbt.org. Just put it in the chat.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, thank you for a great presentation again. Everything